2022 has started as a bloodbath in the equity markets. The indexes are all down and many popular tech stocks are being obliterated, headed to all-time lows. With so much red in the markets, many people are beginning to wonder if the housing market is next. After all, massive cost increases throughout the country have priced millions of potential buyers out of the market. Is this going to be their opportunity to finally make a play? It would make sense that a correlation between stocks, the economy, and the real estate sector exists, but dig deeper and you'll find some surprising data about the 2022 market. An average Tampa home in December of 2019 cost a buyer $284,000. That same home on the market today would likely receive bids in excess of $450,000. An absurd growth that most people would call out as a bubble. Now with the S&P 500 and freefall and many tech stocks getting completely obliterated, many people are pointing to markets like Tampa and expecting the same price action. Our favorite housing expert, Redfin CEO Glen Kelman, was back on CNBC to explain what his predictions are for this year. The statements are shocking considering the market status right now. Take a listen.
Yes, it is. It's still on a tear. The housing market won't give up. People are starting to worry about inflation, though.
Are you concerned? Has it been too hot? Because I'm interested in some of the notes you've shared and the data we've had. It kept soaring even as transaction volume fell, which can be occasionally an ominous sign.
Well, inventory has just been so low. That's been the gating factor on sales volume. And now you have about 3/4 of home buyers being significantly worried about inflation. For some people, that means they want to hurry up and try to buy a home before interest rates increase, but others are starting to step back from the market. We have done an unusual number of consultations coming into this home buying season with people who want to prepare their homes to list. So we're expecting to see more inventory for the first time in about a year, and that should drive more sales. But my guess is that the housing market will have a shorter season than usual because interest rates are going to start increasing through 2022.
So there you have Kelman essentially predicting that the housing market is going to continue its absurd growth despite these recent developments in stocks. He points out extremely low inventory levels. Looking at the supply chart on their very own website, we can see that inventory levels back in the winter of 2019 were around 2 million. Now that number has dipped to 1 million, nearly half the supply and likely even more demand. 43% of homes today are sold over the asking price, despite winter typically being the low demand part of the season. Sure, there has been an uptick in inflation, but despite record-breaking CPI numbers, it seems that people are not worried about this rise just yet. Gallup numbers indicate that only 8% of Americans think inflation is the most important problem facing the US. It's the largest share in decades, but it pales in comparison to that spike in the 80s when nearly half the country believed it was the most serious threat. We still have a long way to go before society applies strong political pressure to relieve this problem. Sure, we're facing interest rate hikes this year, which should in theory slow down the buying, but given the extremely low inventory levels and the change in perception to what a great deal is, I believe we are still going to see strong price rises. Redfin and Zillow agree, and they have updated their projections for this year. At the center of this real estate topic, you'll find the state of Florida. It has seen a massive uptick in prices, leaving many wondering what the future will look like if this pace continues. Mr. Kelman was quick to bring up the subject and use it as an example of just how crazy things are out there. Take a listen.
And in terms of where things remain incredibly hot, there's one state in particular that stands out.
Florida. Oh my gosh, Florida. Everybody's leaving New York for Florida, both Tampa and Miami. So New York is the #1 origin city for people moving, and Miami is the #1 destination of the 10 hottest neighborhoods in America. 5 of them are in Florida. So we're seeing it on both coasts. It's been incredible, both the Gulf side and the Atlantic side. Florida just has low taxes. People are drawn to the warm weather, especially this time of year. The migration has been intense.
What's interesting about this region of the country is that it typically acts as an indicator of what the future holds for the rest of the country. Everyone remembers the recession in 2008 and the massive housing bubble that burst to cause it. Well, did you know that Miami housing prices burst nearly 2 years prior to the Great Recession? The Shiller indicator, a stat that tracks average home prices, peaked in Miami in December of 2006. That's over a year before the rest of the country entered a historic recession. Looking at the chart today, it's easy to spot the massive growth we're experiencing, but we are not seeing that crest form. The housing market continues to go almost parabolic, and it's showing no signs of slowing down. In my opinion, this is the indicator to watch when it comes to spotting the peak before it happens. Right now, I don't see it, and there are many reasons why most experts believe that today's housing market, despite the absurd pricing, is still healthy from a bank perspective. Take a listen to the Redfin CEO explain.
Glenn, going back to the broader housing market, you said we're going to have a shorter season this year as people try and rush to get ahead of rates going up. What happens when we get to that moment? Is it a big correction for the market? Is it a plateauing? Are you fearful of a major correction?
Well, I don't think we're going to see anything like 2008 just because people aren't over their skis with their mortgage payments. So the people who are buying houses now can afford them. Their credit ratings are high. We're unlikely to see a major wave of foreclosures. What you will instead see is just a slowing in home buying demand in the second half of the year if interest rates get above, say, 3.5% for a mortgage. And so my guess is that we'll see a repeat of 2018 when rates increased in the second half of 2018. There was a step back in home buying demand, but because inventory is so low, I don't think that there's going to be a significant step back in prices. We can't see the kind of price appreciation we saw over the past 2 years. That's unrealistic. And in fact, it's undesirable. But I think we can see stable prices, reasonable home buying demand. We're still way above 2019 levels. It's close to 6.5, 7 million units of sales at an annualized rate. That pace is probably going to come down at least 1 or 2 notches.
So there you have it. It seems that the Redfin CEO just doesn't see this wild market reversing anytime soon. Delinquency data backs his claim up. If we look at the delinquency rate on single-family residential mortgages, we can spot that the numbers are extremely low. But before we reveal this, take a moment to hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying this breakdown. Now back to the data. Sure, the numbers are not at 2006 levels, but there isn't an uptick like the one we saw prior to the 2008 recession. In fact, we seem to be trending lower since peaking in the first quarter of 2010. Until we see the data change, it's unlikely that a housing correction is coming. Most commercial banks today are handing out healthy loans, and with rates so low compared to historic levels, the affordability is sometimes better than you think when you look at houses only through the prism of the sticker price. If you view the mortgage debt service payments as a percentage of disposable personal income graph, you can easily see we're at historically low levels. Through this graph, we would need to see home prices more than double before we see similar levels to that of 2008. As always, thank you guys for watching. Please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter. The link is in the description below. With the markets in free fall and Fed Chair Powell contemplating 4 rate hikes, including a potential double hike in March, it's going to be a very interesting first quarter for the real estate market. I'm sure Kelman will be back on CNBC to discuss, and I'll be back to analyze his statements.